Okay, let's jump into part 2 in our series on developing self-intimacy. We're going to be going over some of the principles of Osho's in intimacy, trusting oneself and the other. The first video that we did on this was about being able to listen to and then deeply attune and sort of calibrate your life to your own inner voice. So it's about sort of turning off and tuning out from the noise and the distraction and the sort of oftentimes just maladaptive and nefarious influence of everyone telling us what we should be doing all the time, and why this is a safe thing and that's a good thing. And then by doing that, a lot of the time we actually lose touch with that inner voice inside of us. So if you haven't watched that one already, recommend going to check it out. These build on top of one another. Osho actually says explicitly here in the book that you have to develop one of these things in order to then have a good platform to develop the next. So the first thing is reassuming sovereignty and reassuming that ability to listen to our own inner voice. When we can listen to ourselves, we go back to that state of where we was as children, and we can actually hear what it is that we want. And we have that natural, organic connection to the blueprint that's inherent inside of us, rather than just what we're being told to do by other people. So if you haven't checked that out already, go back and watch that one first. This one today, we're going to be talking about the second principle. And this is really about feeling what it is that you're feeling. Feeling what it is that you're feeling with an openness and an allowing, as opposed to repressing, suppressing, and even expressing at certain times our feelings all the time, and just sort of moving away from what is actually being experienced. And the reason we do this a lot of the time is because we're taught often from a very young age that it is inappropriate to feel what it is that we're feeling. And it's kind of like something that gets programmed and gets conditioned into us from a very young age. Like, for example, you might be 4 years old and something happens, like maybe you can't do what you want to do. The event doesn't go the way that you want it to. And it's natural for you to feel a sense of anger and disappointment. But when you feel that anger and disappointment, if our parents aren't particularly conscious, they don't recognize that, yes, like we are an electromagnetic being that is going to bring through different feelings. And these feelings are our ability to tune to these larger bioenergetic fields. Anger is one of them. There is frustration that exists in the universe. And as a child, we are going to feel frustration. We haven't learned to contextualize things yet in a way where we can sort of transcend that. So it's natural that we're going to feel anger. And it's also natural that we're going to feel a range of other emotions, a very broad spectrum of feelings, from elation, anger, disappointment, sadness, excitement. They're these different feeling tones that shift and change in us very naturally, especially when we're children like that and we're very in touch with our feelings. But oftentimes the message is, let's say we experience anger when we're 4 years old, our parents are going to say to us, good boys or good girls don't get angry. You see it all the time. You see it with parents and their kids, and their kid has some sort of emotional reaction. And it's like you can tell they don't know how to just let the child have the experience. And they try to modify the experience by like manipulating them or sort of coercing them or bribing them oftentimes into something else. And it's not like this sense of like inquiring and being present with. It's like this sense of just, you can feel their fear come up, and then they try to just suppress their fear. And then sort of like with the kid, it's like, no, you don't get angry or I'll punish you. And there's this sense of like, we just get reinforced in this almost like Pavlovian way to not really be able to feel what we're feeling. And Osho goes as far into the book as to say that when it is that, like, let's say, for example, when we feel that we need to cry, he especially goes into detail about men here. When as men we feel like we need to cry, we have the same tear ducts as women. And nature, God has designed us in a way where we have the same amount of tear ducts, and we naturally want to be able to express that emotion, but we feel like we can't. And when it comes up, we try to push it down, and we try to sort of assume this certain position that's not us. So we actually fight against our own nature. And he makes a really interesting point in the book where he says, when we suppress our tears, we're also becoming the kinds of people who suppress our laughter. It's like we don't know how to laugh, we don't know how to cry. After a while, it ends up being like this, we end up being this kind of Frankenstein's monster where like we only feel like we can have a few feelings that relate to our idea of ourselves. And we assume this kind of like megalomania where we feel like we're able to completely fit who we are and all of our responses and reactions from this whole being that we are into a little box, into a little bracket, and just say, here's who I am, here's what I feel. And the bad news is that this is very common. A lot of people who are struggling from quite severe mental health problems and quite severe lifestyle issues are often just people who have never really learned how to be able to feel their feelings properly. And when I say properly, it just means feel them to begin with. Just to be able to know that right now you're angry, and you're angry, and you're angry, and that's it. It's not about doing something with the anger. It's not about transmuting it into work or into a relationship. It's not about transcending it. It's not about understanding. It's not about psychoanalyzing it. This is the most raw, simple expression as I could give it to you. It's just about being angry. It's just about being sad. If you feel down, the first part about it is just feeling down. It's just being here and knowing what it is that you're feeling and trusting the design of your own system to be able to process what it needs to when it needs to. There's a natural blueprint and intelligence, as we said in the last video about listening to the inner voice. You can see why they're interconnected so closely. There's a natural blueprint and intelligence to this system, and we're often not really taught how to listen to it because, like I said, we're being programmed and modified and cajoled into certain things from a very young age, and it becomes just like programmed into us. And even with our schooling, right, there's this sense of like we're going to put a bunch of kids who have all this stuff going on, all these hormonal shifts and different feelings and energy currents and experiences, all these different diverse personalities, diverse dispositions. We're just going to put them all together. It's like everyone needs to do this one thing. And it's like, well, yeah, but why? Is that really? No, it's just the way it is. Well, yeah, but like what if it doesn't work? No, it doesn't matter if it doesn't work. Everyone has to remember stuff. It's route learning. We have to, but what if I can't? What if my brain doesn't work? What if I'm more artistic? No, it doesn't matter. You have to do this. It's like, but what if I can't do that? Then you're a failure and your life sucks and you should feel bad. There's another thing you should feel. Feel bad about yourself. Feel like a loser. It doesn't work. It doesn't work because it assumes a superiority over Mother Nature that we don't have. It's a false sense of superiority. It's only when we can surrender the control back to the universe and give it back that we realize that we have any to begin with, because all the other control is just force. If you're familiar with the work of David Hawkins, you've read books like Power versus Force. Everything below the level of courage or 200 on his logarithmic scale is all force. It has to be instantiated. It has to be enforced. For something to be empowered, it's a higher attractor pattern. It's a higher kind of energy. And part of that higher energy, and one of the ways that we can border into it here, David Hawkins actually goes as far to say himself that the highest, the easiest, the most efficient way, the most quick and efficient way of raising human consciousness is truthfulness with ourselves and our others. And at the end of the day, we have feelings. So how do we be more honest about them? How do we be more truthful about them? Well, we begin by just being honest about what it is and admitting what we're actually feeling. Some of us are so repressed. The difference between suppression, by the way, and repression is suppression is a conscious pushing down. Repression is unconscious. Repression is something that we don't know we're doing. It's quite alarming. And suppression is something where we try to just do it consciously. But either way, they both add on top of one another. There's this sense of we're always trying to kind of push down, or we're just moving outside of the thing. But when it actually comes to it, it's like it's being able to just start by admitting to ourselves that we actually just feel this way. And this isn't just the bad emotions and this isn't the bad feelings, bad emotions. I don't mean it as in they're wrong. I mean as in this isn't the ones that are just the ones that are uncomfortable. This isn't just when we feel down and when we feel depressed. This is when we feel good. Some of us are so megalomaniac about how we feel that we don't even let ourselves feel good. We start to feel good and then we feel like we're too focused on when it's going to end, or we're like suspicious, or like, you know, like for me, like I've approached a lot of different people, and sometimes you're in a really like sort of very fluid state, and you approach someone and you're like, hey, how you going? Like, sorry, I know this is kind of random, but I just saw you before and I thought you looked drop dead gorgeous today. I just wanted to say hi. Or like you might just approach someone in a friendly way and be like, hey, I really loved your outfit, man. I just wanted to give my compliment for the day, say hi. Sorry, my neighbor's, it sounds like he's like doing some sort of ritual upstairs or something. So I'm sorry if you can hear that. But yeah, you'll approach someone like this and you'll notice that they're so guarded right away, and they actually feel like you're trying to sell them something. And obviously it's understandable at some level, but it's interesting to realize that when you experience this enough with people, this is obviously a collective theme, that people are suspicious of just feeling good about the way they are, having someone acknowledge and appreciate them. And I think that it is very much linked into this sense of just not really sometimes ever having the space or the freedom for a lot of us to just feel what we're feeling. So when we are actually getting more in touch with what we're feeling, or we're getting in touch with what's naturally moving through us, what starts to happen is, if you can imagine water that flows through a river or through a creek, as it keeps moving, it refreshes itself, it filters itself, it continues to flow and find new avenues. It permeates into the places that it needs to. It goes where it needs to go, and it's active, it's dynamic, it's alive, it's potent. When water gets stuck, it starts to stink, right? It starts to get congealed, and it gets old. It starts to dry up. And that's exactly what it's like when we try to stop a feeling or an emotion. It might just be a day where we don't feel that good today. And one way of looking at that, like said, in a healthy way, is just be like, I just don't feel that good today. I'm just admitting it. It's just this feeling. It's not like I'm going to change it and I need to read a personal development book. Like, that's one thing later on. But right now, it's just like, you can't just put 40 personal development books on top of the fact that you actually honestly feel this way. What is it like to just feel this way? Even if you're watching this and you feel distracted, what is it like to just be distracted? Not like looking up symptoms of ADHD, not like wondering what's wrong with you. What is it like to just experience distraction? What is it like? This is the key question. What is it like to just be sad right now? What is it like to just be worried about the future, just to feel that afraidness, and just, it is what it is. It is what it is. I don't have to do anything because I'm already it. What is it like just to feel happy right now? What is it like to look my friend or my partner in the eyes and just feel myself love them? What is it like to just feel that? Not like, is it right? Is it wrong? Is it this? Are they feeling the same way? Not all that chatter, but what is it like to just feel the way it is? And what starts to happen over time is when we regain this kind of natural sense, again, this is about self-intimacy. When we regain our relationship with our own feelings and we regain that sense of self-intimacy, it's like we breathe a sigh of relief all the way through our existence, because we're not having to put such an enormous amount of energy into fighting who we are anymore. This takes a lot of energy. These repressed and suppressed feelings that have been buried for sometimes decades result in illness, both mentally and physically. When feelings are suppressed like that and that water gets stuck in that way, it can't flow naturally through the system, and the system becomes congested, inflamed, and sick. Physically, mentally, emotionally, energetically, we get sick. We become disconnected. Because ultimately we are one, and we are in one field of consciousness, we can't, like, a part of the whole cannot separate and dominate the whole. It doesn't work. That voice that keeps talking can't just take precedence over the whole of experience and existence. there does have to be an allowing. There has to be a trust that's placed back into the hands of God. And I don't mean the Christian God or the Hindu God or the Buddha, Muhammad. I just mean what is. God is just what is. God is this. And there has to be a direct, again, like a reassumption of that. There has to be a reassumption of the sovereignty of what we are and our connection to life as a whole. Look at it however you want, whatever higher power. You could even look at it from the perspective of the larger chaotic universe if you're inclined like that. There has to be a reassumption and a trust in what's moving through us is moving through naturally. And this reassumption of our sovereignty in this way frees us up. Like I said before, we breathe a sigh of relief through our whole existence, and we start to trust how we feel. We don't have to feel afraid anymore. We recognize a funny thing where it's not often the fear, but it's the fear of fear itself. It's not often failure, but it's the fear of failure. You start to see your emotions and your feelings in a different way because you see how crucial and how influential they are in day-to-day life, how most of our decisions are based around avoiding certain feelings, and we have aversions to a lot of things and then attractions to other things, and we're trying to control our whole life. And like we said here, we're simply just never going to be fully responsible for this because we can't. It doesn't mean that we don't take responsibility and have a healthy sense of adult independence in our lives. Obviously, we have this. But it just means that we don't assume this sense of, I'm going to be like this and feel like this. And then it's like, if I feel bad, I'll just get rid of it. It's like, you won't. It gets rid of itself because the power which moves those feelings through your body and the thing that creates your body to begin with is of greater significance than our little ego trying to control everything all the time. This fits into self-intimacy because when you can feel what it is that you're really feeling, there's a sense of aliveness that you have with yourself and a sense of connection and intimacy with your own experience that really vivifies you, and it's going to carry over to how you connect with other people. When someone can really feel what they're feeling, other people can feel it from you because you don't feel as afraid or as locked up or as jagged. You can hold eye contact easier. You can be present easier. Your touch is more electrifying. You're just alive. There's an aliveness that emanates out of you when you can trust in your own experience more. Where when you try to control it all the time, there's an uncanny quality to a person of this nature. We said in the last video about people who can be energetically gaunt and sort of become vampiric, and they sort of create a vacuum and suck energy from around them. These are often people who constantly try to repress and suppress feelings. They do so with the use of drugs and alcohol. These are the people who genuinely feel like they need to drink alcohol to go to a club. Like, imagine being in a place where you go to a bar or a nightclub or go hang out with your friends, and like, I used to be like this when I was in my teens, like my late teens. I literally didn't want to go out unless I could like smoke and drink and like take a pill or something. And back then it seems normal because you're social. For me, it seemed normal in my social circle, but I look at it now and I think it's just so sad. Because it's like, why do you need to constantly control everything? Why can't you just have a good time? And again, it's because you feel uncomfortable, or maybe you just don't want to be there to begin with. But there's this constant needing to modify and change and correct everything, where when we just get in touch with how we actually feel, it's like we feel whole again. So that's everything here. And similar to the last one, in the last video I said like about sort of taking time, whether it's just on a brief break at work, or maybe like better yet, actually setting a conscious intention for getting in touch with that inner voice. I would say the same thing here. One good time to do this, by the way, is before you go to sleep in the evening. Particularly if you're someone who tends to fall into the pattern of distracting yourself before you go to sleep, I would just say to you, like, see what happens if, it will probably feel a bit strange at the beginning, but at night, before you go to sleep, what happens if you actually just give yourself, like, some time? It could be 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be timed. You just give yourself some time. Sit on the floor, lay on the floor, sit on your bed, whatever. And just let yourself feel everything that you've been trying to avoid. And you just ask, and like we said in the past video, instead of turning out, you like turn in, and you just ask yourself with genuineness, what is it that I've been trying to avoid feeling? And what's interesting is if you say this with conviction, something will come up. Maybe not, maybe you don't have anything you're avoiding feeling, in which case this video is probably just interesting for you. Hi. But if you really need this, what you'll notice is there's probably something sometimes like right on the surface, like maybe you had a bad interaction earlier and it kind of put some fear in you, or it puts some uncertainty in you, and you're getting back in touch with what it is that you feel. You're saying like, what is it that I'm trying to avoid right now? Sometimes it can be something that comes up from out of the depths and you don't really notice it, and it just ends up there. Sometimes it can be something that's right on the like sort of tip of your tongue energetically, and you just haven't been in touch with it because you've been trying to suppress it so you can function. But just before you go to bed, it's a really good time to ask yourself, like, what is it that I've been trying to avoid feeling? And just actually, like, what happens after a while is you get to this point where you actually start like enjoying just feeling all the things that you're feeling, and it see how it makes you alive again. Like, even if it is sadness, it's like you're in a state of acceptance of your own sadness, and it doesn't bother you because you just feel sad, and that you just trust that you need to right now. You don't look at it like you're a failure. There's no real corresponding narrative about the feeling. It's not what we're talking about. We're so caught up in trying to do something with how we feel that we often just forget to feel it to begin with, to feel how we're feeling to begin with. So what I would say is, like, what happens when you ask yourself, what is it that what is behind this? Like, what is it that I'm trying to avoid feeling? And what's behind that thing that I'm afraid of or I'm bothered by? And just getting in touch with it and not trying to accept it or trying to surrender it or doing a prayer, or they're all their own things. But what we're talking about here is actually just getting back in touch with the feeling and reconvening with the genuine sense of what we feel. So that's what I would leave you with today. Appreciate you watching the video. If you got value out of this, I appreciate you subscribing to the channel, liking the video, commenting something down below, helps the algorithm share the videos, and sharing this to anyone you feel like would get value out of it. I've enjoyed these first two, and I will see you very soon for part 3, where we cover the final pillar in this part of the book of self-intimacy. There's obviously a lot more when it comes to self-intimacy. I can see this turning into a broader series, as I said in the last video, but we'll cover these 3 ones first. And thank you for watching. I will see you very soon. Goodbye.